She was catching her flight until the wounded SEAL at TSA collapsed and said, "Target on board." 27-year-old Captain Diana Reynolds stood in the security line at Denver International Airport, rolling her carry-on behind her and checking her boarding pass one final time. Her shoulder-length auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore comfortable civilian clothes, dark jeans, a fitted black jacket, and boots that looked stylish but could handle action if needed. To everyone around her, she looked like any other professional traveler heading home from a business trip. What they didn't know was that Captain Diana Reynolds was one of the Army's most elite helicopter pilots, finally taking her first leave in 14 months. But Captain Diana Reynolds was far from ordinary. For 7 years, she had piloted Blackhawks and Apaches in some of the world's most dangerous combat zones: Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq. Wherever American Special Operations Forces needed rapid insertion, close air support, or impossible extractions, Diana had been there. Her call sign, Phoenix, had become legendary in military circles, earned after she crash-landed a damaged helicopter in hostile territory, fought off enemy forces for 6 hours, and then flew a salvaged aircraft back to base with 3 wounded soldiers. Her record was impeccable. 923 combat missions, 0 passenger casualties, and a Silver Star for gallantry in action. Today, for the first time in over a year, she was just Diana, a woman going to visit her brother's wedding in San Diego. This morning should have been the start of something simple and peaceful. Diana had spent the previous 3 weeks at her family's ranch in Montana, riding horses, fixing fences, and trying to decompress from months of high-stress combat operations. The transition from war zone to civilian life never got easier, but the wide-open spaces and peaceful routine had helped her remember what she was fighting to protect. Her brother Jake's wedding was the perfect excuse to extend her leave and reconnect with the family she rarely saw. Her flight to San Diego was scheduled to depart at 11:20 a.m., giving her plenty of time to get through security and grab breakfast before boarding. The leave had been mandatory. Her commanding officer, Colonel James Morrison, had practically ordered her to take time off. "Phoenix, you've been pushing yourself too hard," he'd said during their last briefing. "Take some leave. Attend your brother's wedding. Remember what normal life looks like." Diana approached the TSA checkpoint with the casual confidence of someone who had traveled extensively. She'd been through airport security countless times, and the routine was automatic. Remove jacket, shoes off, electronics out, liquids separated. The Denver International Security Area was moderately busy with the late-morning mix of business travelers and tourists heading to warmer destinations. The TSA checkpoint had 3 lanes operating, and Diana chose what appeared to be the shortest line. The agent checking IDs was a tall, muscular man in his early 30s with short-cropped hair and the unmistakable bearing of military service. His name tag read Wilson, and despite wearing the standard TSA uniform, everything about his posture and alertness suggested he had seen serious combat. As Diana handed him her driver's license, she noticed something that immediately triggered her pilot instincts. Wilson's hands were trembling slightly, and there was a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the comfortable air conditioning in the terminal. His breathing was also shallow and controlled, like someone managing pain. "Good morning, ma'am," Wilson said, examining her ID with professional courtesy, but his voice carried an undertone of strain. "Destination today?" "San Diego," Diana replied, studying his face more carefully. Years of reading people under stress had taught her to recognize the signs of someone fighting through physical distress. "Family wedding." Wilson handed back her license, but as she moved toward the metal detector, she noticed he was subtly favoring his left side, and there was what looked like a small but dark stain on his shirt beneath his TSA jacket. Her medical training from combat zones immediately identified it as blood, fresh enough to still be spreading. That's when everything went catastrophically wrong. Wilson suddenly swayed on his feet, grabbed the edge of the ID-checking podium for support, and collapsed to his knees. The impact made an audible sound that caused other passengers to stop and stare. Some began to murmur anxiously and step back, creating a growing circle of concerned onlookers, but Diana's military training kicked in immediately, and she moved toward him without hesitation. "Sir, are you okay?" Diana asked, kneeling beside him and automatically checking for obvious signs of trauma. Wilson looked up at her with eyes that were sharp and focused despite his obvious physical distress. Something about her demeanor, the calm competence, the way she approached rather than retreated, seemed to register with him immediately. He grabbed her wrist with surprising strength for someone who had just collapsed and pulled her closer, speaking in a voice only she could hear. "Target on board." Diana's blood turned ice cold. Those 3 words changed everything in an instant. Wilson wasn't just a TSA agent experiencing a medical emergency. He was military, and he had just used a phrase that indicated an immediate, credible threat was active. Diana's vacation mindset vanished instantly, replaced by the tactical awareness that had kept her alive through 7 years of combat operations in hostile territory. "Details now," Diana whispered urgently, helping Wilson sit back against the checkpoint barrier while maintaining the appearance of providing civilian assistance. "Flight 626 to San Diego," Wilson replied quietly, his breathing labored but his voice steady. "High-value target confirmed on board, armed and extremely dangerous. Intelligence indicates major attack planned during flight." Diana's mind immediately shifted into mission planning mode. Flight 626, her flight. Someone on that plane was planning an attack, and she was about to walk directly into an active combat situation at 35,000 feet, with no backup and no weapons. "How certain is this intelligence?" Diana asked, knowing that false positives in terrorism cases were common, but that SEAL-level operators didn't make casual threat assessments. Wilson reached into his TSA jacket with a shaking hand and pulled out what appeared to be a standard agency badge, but when he flipped it over, Diana saw a different insignia entirely, the gold SEAL trident that marked him as one of the Navy's most elite warriors. "Petty Officer First Class Michael Wilson," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "SEAL Team 6, currently assigned to a joint counterterrorism task force. This is an active undercover operation." Diana's estimation of the situation immediately shifted into a completely different category. If a Navy SEAL from the most elite special operations unit in the military was working undercover TSA security, this wasn't a routine assignment. This was a high-level counterterrorism operation targeting a specific and extremely dangerous threat. "What happened to you?" Diana asked, noting that the bloodstain on his shirt was continuing to spread, slowly but steadily. "Knife wound from yesterday's interdiction mission," Wilson replied grimly, pressing his hand against his side. "Thought I could tough it out for this assignment, but the bleeding started again. Target is Hassan al-Rashid, traveling under the false identity Robert Mitchell. He's a master bomb maker with connections to multiple international terrorist organizations, and our intelligence indicates he's planning to bring down your aircraft." Other TSA agents and airport security personnel were beginning to notice the disturbance and were approaching their position. Diana realized she had only moments before this became a full medical emergency scene that would attract too much attention and potentially alert any terrorist operatives who might be watching for exactly this kind of disruption. "Any idea of his specific plan?" Diana asked quickly. "Electronic detonation device, possibly multiple explosive charges placed strategically throughout the aircraft. But there's more. Our surveillance suggests he's not working alone, possible second operative, but we haven't been able to confirm identity or location." Airport security officers were now approaching with obvious concern, and one was already speaking into his radio. "We need paramedics at checkpoint. Charlie immediately, TSA agent down, possible medical emergency." Wilson grabbed Diana's arm with renewed urgency, his grip surprisingly strong despite his weakened condition. "Captain, I can see it in your eyes. You're military. What's your background?" "Captain Diana Reynolds, Army Aviation," Diana said quickly. "Call sign Phoenix, 7 years combat operations, special operations support." Wilson's eyes widened with immediate recognition. Phoenix was a legend throughout the special operations community, the helicopter pilot who had pulled off impossible rescues, who had flown through enemy fire to extract wounded soldiers, who had never left anyone behind in over 900 combat missions. "Captain Reynolds," Wilson said with a mixture of relief and renewed hope, "this changes everything. You might be the only person who can stop this." Paramedics were arriving now, wheeling a gurney through the security checkpoint, and Diana knew Wilson would be taken for immediate medical attention within the next 60 seconds. She needed every piece of intelligence she could get before that happened. "What support do you have?" Diana asked. Wilson pulled a secure satellite phone from his pocket and pressed it into her hand. "Encrypted military communication. Speed Dial 1 connects directly to our Joint Task Force Operations Center. They have real-time intelligence on the target." One of the approaching security officers was speaking more urgently into his radio now. "Priority medical response needed. Subject appears to be losing consciousness." Wilson made eye contact with Diana one final time before the paramedics reached them. "Captain, there's something else critical. We intercepted communications suggesting this attack is part of a coordinated operation targeting multiple flights across the western United States today. If al-Rashid succeeds, it won't just be your plane. It could be the signal for simultaneous attacks." Diana felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a familiar combat load. This wasn't just about saving one flight. This was potentially about preventing a coordinated terrorist attack that could kill thousands of people and change aviation security forever. As the paramedics began treating Wilson and preparing to transport him, Diana made the choice that would define the next several hours of her life. "I'm going on that flight," she said quietly but firmly. "Captain, that's incredibly dangerous," Wilson replied as the paramedics worked on him. "You'd be going in completely alone against unknown threats with no backup except whatever support we can provide by radio." Diana smiled with the grim confidence that had made her legendary in combat zones. "Phoenix doesn't leave people behind, Wilson. That includes 185 passengers who don't know they're about to fly into a war zone." As the paramedics lifted Wilson onto the gurney, he managed one last piece of advice. "Trust your instincts, Captain. You've survived impossible situations before." Diana quickly moved through the security checkpoint, taking advantage of the confusion created by Wilson's medical emergency to avoid additional scrutiny. Once past the metal detectors, she immediately activated Wilson's secure phone and speed-dialed the operations center. "Phoenix Actual," she said when the encrypted line connected. "Phoenix, this is JSOC Operations Center. We've been monitoring the situation. Confirm your current status and intentions." "This is Captain Diana Reynolds, Army Aviation, call sign Phoenix. I am proceeding to board Flight 626 to San Diego with confirmed terrorist threat on board. SEAL Wilson is down with medical emergency. I am proceeding with solo interdiction mission." There was a brief pause as the gravity of the situation was processed. "Captain Reynolds, Phoenix, your reputation in the special operations community precedes you. What immediate support do you require?" "Complete intelligence package on target Hassan al-Rashid, flight manifest analysis for possible accomplices, and immediate backup contingency plan if the situation goes critical at altitude." "Roger, Phoenix. Uploading intelligence package to your device now. Stand by for comprehensive briefing." Diana found a quiet corner near her departure gate and waited for the incoming data stream. Within minutes, her secure phone displayed a detailed dossier on Hassan al-Rashid, known international bomb maker, suspected in multiple attacks across Europe and the Middle East, master of disguise and electronic warfare techniques. More concerning was additional intelligence that had just been intercepted. Surveillance footage from various locations within the airport showed al-Rashid making brief contact with at least one other individual in the terminal restroom area. While the second person couldn't be positively identified due to camera angles, the meeting clearly suggested coordination between multiple operatives. Diana studied the gate area for Flight 626 carefully, scanning faces and body language for anyone matching al-Rashid's description or displaying the subtle behavioral indicators she had learned to recognize during her combat tours. The challenge was that his most recent passport photo was over 3 years old, and intelligence reports suggested he was exceptionally skilled at altering his appearance. Boarding began with first class and priority passengers, and Diana positioned herself strategically to observe everyone getting on the plane. Her years of threat assessment in combat zones had developed an almost intuitive ability to identify dangerous individuals, subtle behavioral patterns that separated normal travelers from people carrying deadly intentions. She spotted him during the priority boarding group. Medium height, dark hair that looked recently dyed, traveling alone with only a single carry-on bag that he handled with unusual care. He moved with the calm, measured confidence of someone who had rehearsed his actions extensively, and Diana noticed that he paid particular attention to the locations of flight attendants, emergency exits, and the general layout of the guide area. Most telling was the way he unconsciously favored his right side when walking, exactly where someone would carry a concealed electronic device or weapon. Diana quickly sent a secure message to the operations center. Target positively identified. Beginning surveillance phase, proceeding with boarding. The response came immediately. Roger, Phoenix. F-16, escort fighters scrambling from Peterson Air Force Base, ETA to intercept your flight approximately 20 minutes after takeoff. Primary responsibility remains yours. Diana boarded with the general population, strategically choosing seat 17A, which would give her the optimal observation angle on the suspect while maintaining operational flexibility. As she settled into her window seat, she could see Al-Rashid clearly. He had chosen seat 8B, an aisle position that was perfect for mobility during the flight and quick access to multiple areas of the aircraft. The flight was nearly at capacity, 185 passengers plus crew, representing a massive potential casualty count if Al-Rashid succeeded in his mission. Diana realized that if he was planning to detonate explosive devices, the loss of life would be catastrophic. But if his plan was more sophisticated, such as attempting to take control of the aircraft or use it as a weapon against ground targets, the implications could be exponentially worse. As Flight 626 pushed back from the gate and began its taxi sequence toward the active runway, Diana sent a status update to the operations center. Phoenix airborne preparation complete. Target under direct surveillance. No signs of immediate pre-attack behavior. The takeoff from Denver International was routine from a passenger perspective, but Diana's attention remained laser-focused on Al-Rashid's behavior throughout the critical flight phases. During the initial climb to cruising altitude, he appeared to be casually reading a newspaper and occasionally checking his smartphone, but Diana's trained observation revealed he was actually conducting systematic surveillance of the flight attendants' service patterns and timing their movements through the cabin with the precision of someone gathering tactical intelligence. 30 minutes into the flight, cruising at 37,000 feet, Diana's secure phone vibrated with an urgent priority message. Flash traffic, NSA. Intercepts confirm coordinated attack operation involving multiple commercial flights today. Your target may be part of larger synchronized assault. Exercise maximum caution. Diana felt her pulse increase as the strategic implications became clear. If this was part of a coordinated attack involving multiple aircraft, the stakes were exponentially higher than a single terrorist incident. She began conducting systematic observation of other passengers, looking for anyone who might be the second operative Wilson had mentioned, or any additional threats she might have missed during initial boarding. Her military-trained eye, sharpened by years of identifying threats in combat environments, picked up on behavioral details that would escape civilian notice. Most passengers were engaged in typical flight activities, reading books, working on laptops, watching downloaded movies, or sleeping. But one passenger in seat 14F immediately caught her tactical attention. He was a well-dressed man in his early 30s, apparently a business traveler working diligently on an expensive laptop computer. However, Diana noticed critical details that suggested deception. While he appeared to be typing regularly, his fingers never actually made contact with the keyboard in patterns consistent with real work. His attention was focused not on his screen, but on systematic observation of the cabin around him, passenger locations, crew movements, and aircraft systems. More suspicious was the fact that twice during her observation period, she had seen him make brief but deliberate eye contact with al-Rashid, subtle communication that suggested coordination between the two men. Diana immediately sent another secure message. Possible second operative identified, seat 14F, appears to be coordinating surveillance activities with primary target. Request immediate passenger manifest analysis. The response confirmed her suspicions. Confirmed. Passenger in 14F traveling under name David Chen, but facial recognition suggests possible false identity. Treat as hostile operative. You now have two confirmed targets. Diana was now facing a significantly more complex tactical situation than she had initially planned for. Two suspected terrorists, unknown weapons or explosive devices, 185 innocent civilians, and no backup except the F-16 escort fighters flying somewhere outside the aircraft. She needed to gather more operational intelligence before taking any direct action, but time might be running out if they were following a predetermined attack timeline. Diana unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, using the common pretense of needing to use the restroom facilities. As she moved carefully through the cabin toward the rear of the aircraft, she conducted close-range observation of both suspects while maintaining the appearance of a normal passenger. Al-Rashid was still holding his newspaper in a reading position, but from her new angle, Diana could see that he was actually using it to conceal periodic checks of a sophisticated wristwatch, not checking the time casually, but monitoring specific time intervals with the precision of someone following a predetermined operational schedule. The second suspect had closed his laptop and was now conducting open visual reconnaissance of the cabin layout, paying particular attention to the reinforced cockpit door, the positions of flight attendants, and what appeared to be structural elements of the aircraft itself. Something was definitely building toward a specific moment in the flight timeline. Diana returned to her seat and sent a critical assessment. Both targets, displaying pre-action behavioral indicators, strongly suggest coordinated operation planned for specific time during flight. Recommend immediate intervention authorization. The response was immediate and unambiguous. Phoenix, you have full authorization to neutralize threats by any means necessary. Rules of engagement: protect innocent lives at all costs. Diana had hoped to continue gathering intelligence and potentially coordinate with ground-based law enforcement for a post-flight arrest. But the situation was clearly escalating beyond the point where passive observation would be sufficient to prevent an attack. Then she saw something that eliminated any remaining doubt about the immediate danger. Al-Rashid had shifted the position of his newspaper, and from her current angle, Diana could see that he wasn't reading news at all. Instead, the paper was being used to conceal what appeared to be a sophisticated electronic device featuring multiple LED status displays, toggle switches, and what looked like a digital countdown timer showing numbers that were steadily decreasing. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.